right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a Thursday. Time for us to do a poem. No live class today. Hopefully you guys are taking care of yourselves. Being safe. Do not stray outside. Try to stay inside as best you can. The poem we're going to read today is by Charles Bukowski, an American poet. Hopefully you'll see exactly why we're reading this poem in the first couple of lines, but the poem itself is called So You Want to Be a Writer. Let's get this thing going. So You Want to Be a Writer by Charles Bukowski. If it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you have to sit for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter searching for words, don't do it. If you're doing it for money or fame, don't do it. If you're doing it because you want women in your bed, don't do it. If you have to sit there and rewrite it again and again, don't do it. If it's hard work just thinking about doing it, don't do it. If you're trying to write like somebody else, forget about it. If you have to wait for it to roar out of you, then wait patiently. If it never does roar out of you, do something else. If you first have to read it to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your parents or to anybody at all, you're not ready. Don't be like so many writers. Don't be like so many thousands of people who call themselves writers. Don't be dull and boring and pretentious. Don't be consumed with self-love. The libraries of the world have yawned themselves to sleep over your kind. Don't add to that. Don't do it. Unless it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Unless being still would drive you to madness or suicide or murder. Don't do it. Unless the sun inside you is burning your gut, don't do it. When it is truly time, and if you have been chosen, it will do it by itself. And it will keep on doing it until you die or it dies in you. There is no other way, and there never was. All right, so that one's a kind of long poem. Let's read it a second time, see if we get a different take on it as we go through it again. Again, So You Want to Be a Writer by Charles Bukowski. If it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you have to sit for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter searching for words, don't do it. If you're doing it for money or fame, don't do it. If you're doing it because you want women in your bed, don't do it. If you have to sit there and rewrite it again and again, don't do it. If it's hard work, just thinking about doing it, don't do it. If you're trying to write like somebody else, forget about it. If you have to wait for it to roar out of you, then wait patiently. If it never does roar out of you, do something else. If you first have to read it to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your parents or to anybody at all, you're not ready. Don't be like so many writers. Don't be like so many thousands of people who call themselves writers. Don't be dull and boring and pretentious. Don't be consumed with self-love. The libraries of the world have yawned themselves to sleep over your kind. Don't add to that. Don't do it. Unless it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Unless being still would drive you to madness or suicide or murder. Don't do it. Unless the sun inside you is burning your gut, don't do it. When it is truly time, and if you have been chosen, it will do it by itself. And it will keep on doing it until you die or it dies in you. There is no other way. And there never was. All right, so there's the poem. couple of different things for you to focus on. Hopefully these things jumped out immediately. In terms of capitalization, first name, last name. That's it. That's it. He's decided to go lowercase throughout this. And certainly there is some irony to this because there are plenty of periods. There's plenty of sentences that are starting. And so by normal grammatical conventions, they should be capitalized. Last, nothing is capitalized. Nothing is capitalized. So we take that away, and certainly that's reminiscent of what we've seen with E.E. Cummings previously as we look through his stuff. Although when we look through Cummings' stuff, one of the things that also showed up is there was no punctuation in some of those lines. And here we do have punctuation. We have very clear sentence structure. This probably seems somewhat reminiscent of Miracles. And so if we think back to Miracles, that was a list poem. And here, I think we have a list as well. We have a list of different reasons that you may or may not want to be a poet or a writer. Bukowski walks us through a whole bunch of different ideas, one after another after another. These are all really great ideas. And certainly the name of this poem is, hey, so you want to be a writer. So as we're looking at it, we want to focus on that idea of you want to be a writer, this is what you have to do. This can't be something that is slow. This can't be something that is easy. This has to be something that comes bursting out of you in spite of everything, in spite of everything. So maybe your body is trying to keep this from exploding out of you, from getting away from you, and yet it still does, or at least that's what it's supposed to do. If it doesn't do that, well, then the question is, should you do it? And his answer is pretty clearly, don't do it. 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 Even better, forget about it. Do something else. You're not ready. All of these different ideas that he gives us on this page, and then even after we look at this page, if we move on to the next page, even as we move on to the next page, we see even more of that same language. You know, don't be like this. Don't be like this. Don't be this. Don't be this. Don't add to that. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. So he's made it clear to us that there's plenty of reasons not to be a writer. Even better, there's plenty of reasons that people think, I want to be a writer, that Bukowski says, that's not a reason to be a writer. And some of those reasons he lists for us. So we've gone back to the first page of the poem. And as we're looking at this, lots of different things for us to pay attention to here. If it's not something that's automatic, if it doesn't come unasked out of you, if it doesn't burst out of you, if you're having to search for words, all of these things are messages from Bukowski to the reader that writing is not something that you should have to toil over. Writing is not something that you should have to strain over. Writing is something that hopefully you're just ready to do. Then he keeps going. The ideas of money, fame, women in your bed, we can call that love. Okay, or lust. When we look at all of those different ideas, you know, these are things that usually here in America, we go, those are things that we actually pursue. These are the things that you're trying to do. I mean, isn't that what YouTube is all about? That seemed ironic. So money and fame, love, attention, all of those things that we crave, he says these are not reasons to be a writer. Then it keeps going. If you have to rewrite it over and over again, and ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about this, you need to rewrite it over and over again. But if you have to sit there and rewrite it over and over again, he says you shouldn't be writing. Now, as a teacher, of course, I'm going to have a slightly different take on this. You need to practice writing. You need to practice rewriting. You need to practice getting better and better. And the best way to do that and get yourself to be a writer is to write and rewrite, write and rewrite, write and rewrite. So is Bukowski contravening everything I've said? I mean, maybe, or maybe not, or maybe not. If it's hard work just thinking about doing it, oh boy, 8th grade. Man, is this poem talking to you right now? Everything lays in the details. Everything lies in that place where you need to be able to do the work. Not need to be able to. You have to be able to do the work. The work is the focus. The work is the trick. The work is everything. And so he says, if it's hard work just thinking about how hard it might be to do it, you shouldn't do it. That certainly is a hurdle that we're still working to make sure that we get over. That just thinking about hard work isn't necessarily hard work. That maybe we can realize what hard work is, but then we push through and do the hard work and get the spoils of that at the end of the day. And then he says, one of my favorites, if you're trying to write like somebody else, forget about it. I've told you guys over and over this year that you each have your own distinct voice. You have it already. It sounds like you. It sounds like the way that you talk. The words on the page, they have the same feel that the words coming out of your face do. So you have your own voice. But if what you're going to do in your writing is try to mimic someone else's voice, you, as well as your readers, will probably be disappointed. You need to write for you. So there's the end of the first stanza. Essentially a list poem of different reasons for you to not be a writer. Then we go on to stanza 2. If you have to wait for it to roar out of you, then wait patiently. Well, there's a change. There's a big change. Maybe it is worth waiting. Maybe it is worth waiting. Maybe there can be value. Maybe you shouldn't throw all of this idea out of you immediately. Maybe you should wait. And then wait patiently. But then he goes back to what we've already seen. But if it never does roar out of you, if it doesn't happen, then you got to find something else to do. Writing is not the gig for you. If you have to read it to your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your parents or to anybody else, if you are looking, again, we talked about attention earlier, but here in stanza 3, we're still talking about attention. Or even more, this might be about praise. And if you're looking for somebody to compliment you on the work that you've done, and the only reason that you're in it is for the compliments on how great it is, or I love this, it's so wonderful, you're such a good writer, you might be doing it for the wrong reasons. Or more pointedly, you're not ready. If you're not doing it for yourself, if you're not doing it because it's important to you, then you're not ready. So there's page 1. Let's flip over and look at the second page of this poem and try to break that part down as well. Let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better. So now we're in stanza 4. Don't be like so many writers who call, or so many people who call themselves writers. Boy, he's got the sharp sticks out and he's ready to jab them into people. Don't be like those bad writers. Even better, don't be like those people who just call themselves writers. They're not writers. They're writing in somebody else's voice. They're doing it for the wrong reasons. They slave away and can't find the words. They're dull. They're boring. They're pretentious. Ugh. They're consumed with self-love. Look at me. Look how great I am. And then we get to these lines. Again, these are lines that I want you to focus on for particular reasons. The libraries of the world have yawned themselves to sleep. So we definitely have personification. And even better, we have humor. That the libraries are so bored with these writers. They have yawned themselves to sleep, having to hear how wonderful these writers believe themselves to be. Don't do that. Don't add to that. And then the second half of stanza 4, we have these lines where he actually starts to turn the corner a little bit on us and says, hey, wait, here's why you might want to be a writer. Maybe it comes out of your soul like a rocket. Maybe it is explosive. Maybe it would drive you crazy or make you do horrible things if you weren't doing it. Or maybe there's a sun inside of you that is just burning you alive from the inside, and there's something that has to get out of you. Those are reasons to be a writer. And then we get down to these last 3 stanzas. When it is truly time, and if you have been chosen, who chooses? It seems to me like if we're looking at this from Bukowski's point of view, the choosing is perhaps just from the words or from the experience or from whatever life you have led. If it has led you, whether it's fate or some divine intervention or even something else, maybe just chance. If you have been chosen, then it, the ability to write, will do it. Writing will write by itself. And writing will keep going until you die or until the writing dies inside of you. But the writing is going to happen naturally. It is going to occur. If it's in you, it will happen. There is no other way. You can't force this any other way. And there's not another way. There's never been another way to do this. And so all of this comes from a writer who certainly is somewhat cranky. He certainly is strong-minded, strong-willed in terms of should you also be a writer? Should you pick up his craft? Should you act the same way that he does? Doesn't seem like he wants a whole lot of people to go into the writing field, although at the same time, it does seem as though there's places for others to come and join him. They just need to do it for the right reasons. Perhaps the biggest question here is, maybe should you be a writer? That certainly is kind of the question at the very top of the poem. That is the title of the poem. But then how can we apply this? Because let's be honest, some of you, if I were to ask you right now, do you want to be a writer? Your answer would definitively be no. Never. I don't even want to write again in your class, White. I understand. So, is there any other way for us to use this poem? If I don't want to be a writer, can I use this any other way? I think the answer is yes. Especially his advice in terms of why are you doing what you want to do? That should be applicable whether it's writing that you want to do, or being an engineer is what you want to do, or being a mathematician, or being a scientist, or being a historian, or being a cashier, or being a truck driver, or being a plumber, or being whatever it is that you might want to be. Why are you doing it? If it comes down to money, or if it comes down to fame, or if it comes down to attention, or if it comes down to praise, or if it comes down to any one of these other vices that Bukowski lays out for us, should you do it? It seems like the answer is no. So while you may not want to be a writer, still this poem should be able to reach out and affect you. It should be able to remind you that there are particular reasons that we do things. There should be passions for things. You know me, I've had a couple of careers. There was the whole lawyer thing, and before that there was the working in radio thing, and now there's the teaching thing, and those days in record stores gone by. Oh man, those jobs were great. I know record stores are things where people would sell you Spotify. They wouldn't sell you Spotify, but they would sell you small pieces of Spotify on a piece of plastic that was silver or on a cassette tape. Never mind. All of those other careers have been great, but it's a matter of finding the thing that you are passionate about. And maybe that moment is today, and maybe it's not today. I can tell you, if I had tried to be a teacher when I first came out of college, which would have been around 332 years ago now, there's no way I would have been good at this. I know. You're still not good at it. I get it. Funny. Preempted your comment. You don't need to add anything on YouTube. Thanks. But there's an appropriate time and an appropriate place. And I think that's one of the things that we also see from Bukowski is, maybe the job that you have today is the right job for today. But then again, maybe in a few years, it will be a different place and a different time and a different experience and a different level of passion. And maybe that's the moment that you should do that new job. So you want to be a writer? Doesn't seem to me like he's encouraging a whole lot of 15-year-olds to go out and be a writer immediately. It doesn't seem like he's really pushing a whole bunch of 25-year-olds to go out and be a writer immediately. But maybe after you've actually lived for a while and there's an experience there, maybe that's the time that you go back and revisit this. So again, I understand if you don't want to write anything for me for the rest of the year, I couldn't blame you. But write next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and for another, hopefully 4 years after that, maybe even longer after that. And then you can take a break for a little while, but maybe, just maybe, there will be a reason for you to go back and write again at some point. Maybe it will be bad poetry. Maybe it'll be a novel. Maybe it'll be your autobiography. But maybe, just maybe, there's a writer lurking somewhere inside of you, just waiting to burst out. So there's today's poem. Bukowski's So You Want to Be a Writer. That's all we got. I hope you guys are staying busy, working hard, entertaining yourselves, playing Animal Crossing, doing anything else that you're supposed to be doing in this time of COVID. In the meantime, stay inside, check your temperature, wash your hands. Same old, right? And lastly, make sure that you are being kind to each other, be kind to your families, be kind to yourself. I'll see you again very soon. Take care.